Hi guys, it's Dale with the insurance. Today we're going to talk about an article that's hopefully it's a review for you guys, and furthermore, hopefully you don't ever have to initiate this because it can be quite expensive. But either way, it's certainly good to know. The title of the article is "Everything You Need to Know About COBRA Insurance," right? So COBRA, the Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1985, if you don't already know, it basically provides a continuation of group coverage when you are no longer eligible for group coverage, right? So group coverage being the health coverage your employer provides, right? And this is crucial and very important because more often than not, the coverage that your employer provides, more often than not, is better than the coverage you choose individually, right? And that's only that. To be honest, that's because of costs. Like for instance, you can certainly go out and get the exact same coverage you had at your job. It's just going to cost a pretty penny, right? And large corporations obviously spread that cost amongst the group, and they are able to provide very good coverage for a lower price than what you individually can go out and get for yourself. So all that being said, who's eligible, right? So you're eligible if you were fired, right? And there's a caveat here because if you were fired for gross misconduct, then you're not eligible, right? And gross misconduct is kind of things like fraud, theft, violence, things that are grossly unethical and wrong. Then you can be fired without pay, without notice, just on the spot, and you don't have access to COBRA. You are eligible if you quit. You're eligible if your hours are reduced to a point where you're no longer kind of a full-time employee. You no longer have that eligibility of full health coverage. Another thing, dependents are also eligible, right? Dependents can be eligible if they turn 26 and they're too old to be on their parents' policy, so to speak. Dependents are eligible if the spouse, for instance, legally separates from the other person, the dependent, or if they divorce the dependent. If the dependent dies, that's another way. Not the dependent, the person who's covered dies, then the dependent is eligible for COBRA. Also, if the covered employee then qualifies for Medicare and enrolls in Medicare, the dependent can also then elect to go with COBRA. There are some notable rules that box in COBRA that you want to keep in mind. For one, this legislation applies to the private sector, right? And then to your local and state governments with an employee minimum. So it's a kind of a 20 employee minimum to where this applies. You also, another thing that's notable is you have to notify COBRA that you are electing for coverage within 60 days of this qualifying event. You also can kind of cancel coverage at any point in time. Also, COBRA can last up to 18 months, which is a good amount of time given you may be between jobs and most people want to get back on the horse pretty quickly. So 18 months should give you enough time to find that next occupation. And what we alluded to in the beginning, it is quite expensive. So if it's not an option, there are alternatives. You can go and get another individual health policy, right? You can try to get coverage through the ACA, through the Affordable Care Act. And then you can also get short-term. You can get a short-term health policy to connect you from one job to when you'll be covered by your next job, right? So once again, hopefully you don't have to elect this option, because it would mean that you're either fired, you quit, but either way, you're without coverage for a certain amount of time, which is not a good thing. And COBRA can be expensive, but it does provide the same coverage you have become accustomed to within your prior job. So if it's not an option, we still advise you to be covered. So look at kind of the ACA, another individual health plan, or a short-term policy. Hopefully all of this is helpful. Thanks for stopping by, guys. We'll chat next week.